They told me to water the plants and double lock the doors, like I was a housemaid they could count on but not bring along. "You're too old for long flights, Grandma. Just watch the house." That's what they said before driving off in their big black van, laughing about Greek beaches and fresh seafood. They didn't see my face as they left. I didn't say a word, just waved. But the next morning, I found their plane tickets in my mailbox, still in the travel agency envelope, unstamped. I stared at them for a full minute, like they were someone else's problem. Departure in 3 days. Athens. 2 adults? 2 children? Seats together? My name was nowhere. Of course it wasn't. I took them inside, placed them on the kitchen table, and made tea. That's what you do at my age when something punches you in the chest. You make tea and wait for your hands to stop trembling. But they didn't. They shook when I reached for my old address book, when I found the number for the agency. "I'd like to cancel these tickets," I said. The girl on the other end sounded surprised. "Can I ask why, ma'am?" "No," I said. "Just cancel them." There was silence, then a polite, almost fearful, "Of course." I wrote down the confirmation number. Then I made another cup of tea, sat in the armchair where I used to rock my son to sleep, and looked around the living room. The photo of my husband, Paul, was still on the mantel. Still young, still smiling. He'd passed 20 years ago. If he were here, he wouldn't have let this happen. I'd been many things in this house: a wife, a nurse, a secretary, a cook, a fixer of broken toys and broken hearts, and for the last decade, just Grandma. Not Helen, not Mom. A presence in the background, muted and obedient. They thought I'd sit quietly and wait for updates. Photos of blue skies sent to the family chat. Messages like, "We miss you, wish you were here," knowing full well they'd never intended to bring me. I looked at the canceled tickets again. Then I opened the drawer where I keep my passport. It was still valid. I had a little over $12,000 in my savings account. A few thousand more in bonds. No debts. No one depending on me. Not anymore. I booked a flight. Athens, 1 seat. Aisle. Next, I called my neighbor Carol and asked if she'd water the plants. "Sure, hun. Going somewhere?" she asked. "Just a little trip," I said. I packed one small suitcase, comfy shoes, my best scarf, and that navy blue dress I hadn't worn since Paul's funeral. Not because of sadness, but because it made me look sharp, and I'd forgotten how to wear anything that made me feel that way. The night before my flight, I sat on the porch. The street was quiet. A soft wind played with the ivy. I thought about what they'd say when they realized. Maybe they'd call. Maybe they wouldn't. I didn't care. For once, I wasn't staying behind. The morning came gently. I locked the door, left a note for Carol, and walked down the steps. Slowly, but with purpose. I didn't look back. The gate agent glanced at my passport, then at me, and smiled in that rehearsed way young people do when they see someone old traveling alone. "Enjoy your flight, ma'am." I didn't answer. I just walked on, one hand gripping the handle of my suitcase, the other holding my boarding pass like a shield. I hadn't flown in nearly 30 years. The airport felt loud, metallic, all glass and announcements and people with tangled lives. But I moved through it like I belonged, because pretending you belong is half the battle. That's something you learn when you've been quietly invisible for too long. On the plane, I took my seat by the aisle, sat still while others stuffed their bags in overhead bins. The seat beside me stayed empty until the last moment. Then a young man, mid-30s, wedding ring, quiet eyes, dropped into it with a sigh. "Long trip?" he asked as we taxied. "Long enough," I said. He smiled, then left me alone, which I appreciated. I slept most of the flight. The kind of sleep that's not deep, but necessary. The kind that keeps grief from turning into rage. When I woke, we were over the Mediterranean. I looked out the window. Endless blue. That was the moment I realized I'd really done it. I wasn't here to sightsee. I wasn't here for photos. I was here because they told me not to come. At the airport in Athens, I moved slower. The heat was different, even inside. I took a taxi to a modest little pension on a side street. Nothing fancy, but clean. The woman at the desk spoke English and called me Madam, like it still meant something. Once in the room, I placed my suitcase by the wall and sat on the edge of the bed. I didn't cry. I just stared at the tiled floor for a long while. Grief doesn't always look like tears. Sometimes it's just sitting still, thinking of all the birthdays and holidays where you smiled through being unwanted. I spent that evening walking, not far, just a few blocks. Found a small bakery, ordered bread and olives. The waiter was kind, didn't rush me. I ate slowly, without looking at my phone once. Nobody was waiting on an update from me anyway. The next morning, I woke early. The light here was different, softer. I opened the shutters and let it in. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I put on lipstick. Just a little. The shade I used to wear before everything in life became beige and apologetic. I asked the front desk for recommendations, not tourist spots. Somewhere quiet, I said. The young woman wrote something down. Try Anaphaiotica, she said. It's old, very peaceful. So I went. White houses, winding alleys, cats sleeping in doorways, flowers in chipped pots. Everything was slow and stubbornly beautiful. I walked until my feet ached. Then I sat on a stone bench and just existed, while young couples passed by, sun-happy and loud. No one stared at me. No one told me I was too old. No one told me to just watch the house. I thought of my granddaughter, Amelia, 16, always sending me filters and photos with her tongue out. I wondered what she'd say if she saw me here. Probably laugh. Maybe roll her eyes. I reached into my bag and took out a postcard I'd bought earlier. I hadn't planned to write, but my fingers moved on their own. Dear Amelia, guess where I am? Greece. The sea is bluer than you can imagine. I hope you're well. Love, Grandma. I didn't write to my son, or his wife. They didn't need to know. The postbox was near a cafe. I dropped the card in, then ordered a coffee. Drank it slowly, the way my mother used to in the mornings, when everything was quiet. That evening, back in my room, I noticed I was humming an old tune, one Paul used to sing while shaving. I hadn't thought of it in years. I wasn't young, I wasn't particularly brave, but I was finally somewhere I wanted to be. That counted for something. I didn't plan on meeting anyone. That wasn't the point. But life has its own sense of timing, and it rarely consults you before setting something in motion. It happened at breakfast, 2 days after I arrived in Athens. I was at the little table near the window, sipping coffee and buttering toast with more care than necessary. Across from me, at the next table, sat a woman about my age. Silver hair swept up into a no-nonsense bun, eyes sharp despite the half-moon glasses perched low on her nose. You use too much butter, she said, not unkindly. I looked up, slightly amused. Better than too little. She nodded. Fair. That was the beginning. Her name was Rosalie, a retired school principal from Lyon, traveling alone, like me. Widowed, she added casually, as if it were just another stamp in her passport. She had that dry, flinty confidence some women wear like good perfume, not overpowering, just quietly present. We started walking together, Not far, just morning strolls through the quieter streets. I liked the way she noticed things, not the postcard landmarks, but the details everyone else passed by. A broken shutter that had been painted lilac. A dog asleep beside a statue. She wasn't trying to capture anything for social media. She just looked. Really looked. At lunch, we sat under a vine-covered terrace, sipping cold white wine. She talked about her students, the troublemakers she secretly liked most. I told her about my garden back home, how the tomatoes never cooperated no matter how gently I spoke to them. "And your family?" she asked. I paused. "They're fine," I said. "Just thought I was too old to travel." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "They said that to you?" I nodded. She didn't react dramatically, just sipped her wine. "You're here," she said. "So they were wrong." That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the years I'd stayed in my lane, the birthday parties I cooked for but never sat down to enjoy, the trips I funded but was never invited on. How often I'd told myself, "They're just busy," or "You're needed here." But I wasn't needed. Not really. Not beyond the caretaking, the meal prep, the dependable presence. The next morning, Rosalie knocked on my door. She had a map folded under her arm and a glint in her eye. "Florence," she said. "It's not far. I've always wanted to see the Uffizi. You?" I hesitated. "Why not?" I said. We booked train tickets that afternoon, 2 women over 70, buying one-way seats like students on summer break. We laughed about it over dinner, though something in me still felt tight, like an old muscle not used to moving. That evening, I received a message from my daughter-in-law. I hadn't heard from her in weeks. "Did you check the garden? The sprinkler system's been weird lately." No, "How are you?" No, "Where are you?" I didn't reply. Instead, I packed. Folded the navy dress with care, wrapped the pearls, rolled my shoes in a plastic bag, old habits from years of practical travel. I moved slowly, not from age, but from savoring. In the corner of my room sat a small vase of fresh daisies, a gift from Rosalie. "Because you look like someone who appreciates flowers without needing a reason." She wasn't wrong. That night, I placed the phone in a drawer and turned it off. No pings, no alerts. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like someone waiting to be included. I felt like someone moving forward, one step at a time. The train to Florence left just after 9. We sat side by side in a quiet car, our bags stored above us, a paper bag of croissants between us. Rosalie read a mystery novel in French. I stared out the window. The countryside rolled by, soft and golden, stitched with vineyards and sleepy towns. It looked like a painting my husband once bought at a flea market. Cheap frame, but beautiful inside. He said it reminded him of places he'd never been. I never thought I'd see it myself. We didn't talk much. That was the comfort of Rosalie. She didn't need to fill silence, didn't press with questions. When the train rocked gently around a curve, she looked up from her book and offered me the last croissant without a word. I took it and smiled. That was enough. Florence greeted us with warm air and narrow streets. Our hotel was old and full of charm, the kind of place where the elevator creaked and the keys were heavy brass with leather fobs. Our room had a tiny balcony that overlooked red roofs and laundry lines strung between buildings. "I want to see Botticelli," Rosalie said, dropping her bag onto the bed. "And maybe something ridiculous and expensive I'll never wear." We did both. The Uffizi was crowded, but worth it. Standing in front of the Birth of Venus, I felt something loosen in me. Not awe, exactly. more like recognition. That feeling that beauty isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, inevitable, and you don't realize it's moving you until you feel your throat tighten. We walked for hours afterward, stopping at a cafe where the waiter flirted with Rosalie, and she flirted right back. She had a way of doing that, making herself feel young without pretending to be. I envied it. That night, we ate at a small place on the Oltrarno side of the river, far from the crowds. Pasta with butter and sage, red wine in short glasses, laughter that came easier than usual. "You're different now," Rosalie said softly. "How so?" "You sit taller, less folded." I didn't know how to respond, so I just nodded. Later, back in the room, I checked my phone out of habit. 24 missed calls. 14 from my daughter-in-law. The rest from my son. I didn't listen to the voicemails. Just scrolled through the messages. "Where are you? Are you okay? Did something happen?" Then a voice memo. My son's voice, tired and clipped. "Mom, please, call us. The kids are upset. We thought you'd be home." I stared at the screen, trying to feel something. Anger, sadness, guilt. But what I felt was distance, not cruelty, just space, enough to breathe. The next day, Rosalie slept in. I wandered through a quiet part of town, following my nose rather than a map. Found a shop with linen skirts and silver earrings. Bought neither, but tried both. In the afternoon, we took the bus to Fiesole, up the hill, away from the noise, sat under trees, and watched the city from above. "This," I said, not meaning the view exactly. "This was missing." Rosalie nodded, like she knew what I meant. When we got back, there was another message. My son again. "Mom, did you cancel our vacation on purpose? We got to the airport and... Never mind. Just... Please call. We're worried." I turned the phone off. That night, as we walked back to the hotel, Rosalie said, "So, where next?" I thought for a moment. "Lisbon," I said. "Always wanted to hear Fado live." She grinned. "Let's go then." Lisbon welcomed us like an old friend. Warm, a little disheveled, and full of music you didn't need to understand to feel. The sidewalks shimmered from last night's rain, and even the air seemed to hum with quiet defiance, like the city knew something the rest of the world had forgotten. We stayed in a guest house with blue shutters and tile walls. Our room had a tiny balcony that overlooked a square where children kicked a ball between rusted benches. I stood there a long time that first evening, watching the sun slip down behind the rooftops, listening to the voices below. Soft, fast Portuguese that felt like wind in the leaves. Rosalie wasn't feeling well that day. Nothing serious, just a low fever and aching joints. "It's nothing," she waved me off. "I've been worse. Go out. See the city." But I didn't. I brought her tea instead, sat by her bed, reading aloud from a book we'd picked up in Florence. A slow, quiet afternoon. She dozed off halfway through a paragraph, her face more peaceful than I'd seen in days. It reminded me of my husband in the hospital, the quiet breathing, the little gestures of care that no one writes poems about, but matter more than anything. I realized something then. I'd spent my whole life looking after others, children, grandchildren, Paul, even the dog. But this, sitting by Rosalie's bedside, pouring tea, checking her temperature, this didn't feel like obligation. It felt like choice. That night, I cooked for us. Nothing fancy. Eggs, bread, tomatoes I bought from a corner vendor who smiled like we were old acquaintances. We ate on the balcony, wrapped in shawls. Rosalie was better, her color back, her voice stronger. Thank you, she said, after we finished eating. For the eggs? For not leaving. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded and took another sip of tea. The next morning, I woke to the sound of fado, that haunting, melancholic music that seems to come from somewhere older than sadness itself. A man played in the square below. His voice cracked in places, but it didn't matter. The song reached me anyway. I stood at the balcony, barefoot, arms crossed against the morning chill, and let the music settle into my bones. By the time Rosalie was ready to go out, the city had fully woken. We walked slowly, her still recovering, me lost in thought. We passed a church, its doors wide open, incense curling into the street. I didn't go in. I just watched a woman light a candle, kneel, and press her palms together like she was holding something fragile between them. Back at the guest house, I turned my phone on. 5 new messages. My daughter-in-law, again. This isn't funny, Helen. And then, we're not sure what to tell the kids. And from my son, you've made your point. Had I? I wasn't even sure what point they thought I was making. I hadn't spoken a word since they left me behind. Rosalie watched me read the messages. She didn't ask, just poured tea and handed me the cup. That night, we found a fado bar tucked between 2 laundry-strung alleys. No menu, no tourists, just locals, clinking glasses, and one woman with a voice that sounded like rusted silk. She sang about longing, about being left behind, about getting back up. I sat there, eyes closed, heart strangely still. She wasn't singing for me, but I understood every word. The letter came folded into thirds, slipped under our guesthouse door sometime during the night. No stamp, no envelope, just my name, written in a rushed, familiar hand. I knew it before I picked it up. My son. I sat on the edge of the bed, the letter unopened in my lap, while Rosalie busied herself with her scarf in the mirror. She didn't ask about it. She'd seen it too, the way you see a bruise forming on someone else's skin, visible, but not yours to touch. I unfolded the letter carefully. It wasn't long. 3 short paragraphs written with the same cold courtesy he used when he filled out forms. Mom, we don't understand what you're doing. The kids are confused. Amelia cried. We thought you were just upset, but this is something else. If you're trying to punish us, you've made your point. Come home. Let's talk. Please. David. That was it. No, I'm sorry. No acknowledgement that they'd excluded me from the trip they planned with such ease and without a second thought. Just concern for how it looked now that I was gone, as if my absence had embarrassed them more than their rejection had hurt me. I folded the letter again, placed it in the drawer beside my bed, and got up. Rosalie turned to me. So, are we having breakfast or just mourning the weak pensmanship of disappointing sons? I laughed. It caught me by surprise. We ate in the courtyard. Sunlight filtered through the vines above, and the smell of sweet bread and strong coffee softened the morning. Rosalie chatted about the local tram routes, how she wanted to visit the tile museum. I nodded, but my thoughts were still with the letter and the quiet that had followed my absence from their lives. The truth was, I hadn't left to punish anyone. I'd left because I was done asking for a seat at a table that kept shrinking every year. Birthdays had become text messages. Holidays were too busy this year, maybe next. And now, even vacations, the joyful ones, the family ones, came with the quiet understanding that I was no longer included. I hadn't stopped being a mother or a grandmother. They had simply stopped seeing me. Later that day, I sat alone on a stone wall by the river. Boats drifted slowly. Pigeons argued over crumbs at my feet. My hands rested in my lap, still as the water. I thought of Amelia, 16, all bright eyes and too much eyeliner. The last time we spoke, she'd asked me how to fry an egg. She called me the egg whisperer. She didn't know about the tickets, didn't know I'd canceled the whole trip. She probably thought they'd forgotten to invite me, or that I'd said no. I reached for my phone and typed a message. Sweetheart, I'm fine. I'm traveling. Not angry, not hiding, just needed a bit of sky. Don't worry. Love you. I hit send before I could second guess myself. Rosalie found me there half an hour later, carrying 2 small paper bags. Pastéis de nata, she said. You can't leave Lisbon without trying these. We ate in silence, watching the shadows lengthen. That evening, the guest house manager approached us with a puzzled look. Mrs. Helen, he said, your daughter-in-law called. She's worried. She asked me to tell you. The children miss you. I nodded. Thank you. He hesitated. Do you want to call her back? No. He seemed unsure, then walked away. I slept deeply that night. The kind of sleep you get when you've stopped expecting to be needed and started choosing to be whole. In the morning, Rosalie showed me 2 train schedules. One for Madrid, one for Seville. Your pick, she said. I looked out the window. The sky was cloudless. The street below smelled of roasted chestnuts and bus brakes, life in its unpolished form. Seville, I said. Let's see what else they said I was too old for. Seville felt like fire in the bones, not just from the heat, though it pressed down on us like a warm hand, but from the life that pulsed in every alley, every window, every late-night voice echoing across the stone streets. It wasn't a city that asked permission to be seen. It simply was. Bold, proud, unapologetic. We arrived in the late afternoon. Our hotel was tucked between a bakery and a small shoe shop that smelled of leather and dust. The room was modest, but the balcony overlooked a courtyard with orange trees, their scent mixing with the distant hum of a flamenco guitar. Rosalie took one look around and declared, "This place demands earrings." She disappeared into the bathroom and emerged minutes later with silver hoops that danced when she moved her head. I had none to match, but I pinned back my hair and put on lipstick. The same tube I'd found at the bottom of my bag in Athens. It was almost empty now, and for the first time in years, I considered buying another. That evening, we went out without a plan. The streets were alive, not in the noisy tourist way, but in the way old cities breathe after sunset. We followed the sound of clapping and landed in a courtyard restaurant where a small group performed flamenco. Not for tips, not for cameras, but for each other. A woman danced, her face neither smiling nor posed, just full of something I hadn't seen in a long time. Presence. Like she existed entirely in that moment, for herself, with no apology. I couldn't stop watching her. Rosalie leaned in, whispered, "She's older than we are." I looked closer. She was, at least mid-70s. Her feet struck the floor with the force of a promise. The crowd applauded. I didn't. I just watched, heart suddenly too full. The next day, we visited the Alcazar. Its walls told stories in tiles and arches. I thought of all the stories I had locked inside me. Years of quiet endurance, of pushing down disappointment to make room for duty. I walked those gardens as though I belonged there. No one stopped me. No one called me dear or offered to take my arm like I was fragile. And for once, I didn't feel fragile. That afternoon, we sat at a cafe under a striped awning. Rosalie sipped lemonade and read the news on her tablet. I watched people walk by. That's when I saw the family. 4 of them. 2 parents, 2 teenagers. The father looked tired. The mother walked slightly ahead, phone in hand. The girl had headphones on. The boy carried a small plastic bag. It should have been unremarkable. But the woman's haircut, sharp, blonde, too familiar. My breath caught. It wasn't her. Of course it wasn't. But for a second, I saw my daughter-in-law's silhouette in that stranger, and my chest tightened, not from hurt, but from something I couldn't name. It passed. Back at the hotel, I found a message from Amelia. "Grandma, where are you now? Your photo from Lisbon was amazing. I showed it to my art teacher. She said you have a really good eye. Can I call you soon?" I smiled, then frowned. I hadn't sent her a photo. Rosalie. Of course. I opened my phone gallery. There it was. Me on the balcony in Lisbon, one arm resting on the iron rail, looking out at the street. I didn't remember her taking it. I didn't even remember standing still that way. But there I was, not posing, not apologizing, just existing. I typed back, "Seville now. It's hot and stubborn and full of beautiful noise. I'll call you tomorrow. You'd love it here." That night, I lay in bed and thought of all the places I'd never been because someone had to stay behind and hold everything together. The times I'd said, "You go ahead, I'll be fine." Even when I wasn't. The vacations I paid for but wasn't invited on. The weddings I helped plan but sat at the edge of. But now, here I was. In Seville. In a soft cotton nightgown I'd bought from a street vendor who called me La Señora Valiente, the brave lady. I closed my eyes and let the music from a distant radio float through the window. Tomorrow, I'd dance. Not for anyone. Just to remember that I could. It started with a call I didn't answer. Then another. And another. By mid-morning, the screen lit up again. David. My son. Same name. Same number. Same silence when I let it ring out. There had been 26 calls in 2 days. One voicemail after another. I didn't listen to a single one. I wasn't angry, not anymore. Just done with asking to be heard. Rosalie was already dressed when I stepped out of the bathroom. She wore a wide-brimmed straw hat and a linen dress that floated behind her when she moved. "There's a market by the river," she said, "and I feel like haggling." We walked there slowly, my sandals scraping against the old stones, the sun licking the back of my neck like a mischievous child. The market was alive. Not polished, not curated. Real. Men shouting prices, women laughing, children darting between stalls with sticky fingers. I felt something loosen in my chest, a thread pulled free from a knot I didn't know I'd been carrying. I bought a scarf. Yellow, bright as marigolds. It wasn't a color I usually wore. But it caught the light like it belonged in my life. While Rosalie negotiated over a basket, I sat under a faded umbrella with a cold drink and checked my messages. I don't know why. Maybe habit. Maybe hope. There was a voice memo. Not from David this time. From Amelia. Her voice was soft, uncertain. "Grandma, I don't know if you'll hear this, but I just wanted to say I miss you. Mom and Dad are kind of freaking out. They think you're trying to prove something, but I don't think so. I think you just got tired of being left behind. I would have been too. Anyway, I hope you're safe. You look happy in that photo. I've never seen you look like that. Just call me, okay? Even if it's just for a minute." I listened to it twice. Then again. That last sentence cracked something open. Even if it's just for a minute. I went back to the hotel alone while Rosalie went looking for olives. I sat on the edge of the bed with the yellow scarf in my lap. Then I picked up the phone and called. Amelia answered on the second ring. "Grandma?" Her voice wavered. I could hear background noise, a kettle boiling, someone's footsteps across tile. "I'm here, sweetheart." "Oh my God, wait!" The phone jostled. A door closed, then quiet. "I was starting to think you'd gone totally rogue," she said, her voice trembling just slightly. "Not rogue," I said. "Just found something I'd forgotten I'd lost." "What?" "Myself." She was quiet a moment. "I get it," she said softly. "I think I get it more than Mom and Dad do." I believed her. We talked for 15 minutes about school, her drawings, a boy she liked but who didn't like her back. Normal things. Precious things. Then she asked carefully, "Are you coming back soon?" "I don't know yet," I said honestly. "Can I see you when you do?" "Of course, baby." We hung up. I felt lighter, not because everything was fixed, but because something true had passed between us. And truth, real truth, always clears the air. Rosalie returned with a triumphant look and a paper bag full of olives. "Victory," she declared. We ate them on the balcony. The sunset burned the sky red. "I think they're starting to understand," I said after a while. "Who?" "My family." She chewed slowly, then nodded. "About time." I didn't sleep much that night. Not from restlessness, from something deeper, a shift, a new weight, not heavy, but solid, like finally finding the floor under your feet after drifting too long. In the morning, I put on the yellow scarf. No reason, just because I could. Lisbon had been soft and aching, Florence graceful and slow. But Seville had given me heat and thunder, shaken loose a part of me I didn't realize was still trapped in apology. And now, with my scarf tied neatly at my neck and my ticket in hand, we boarded the train to Granada. Rosalie was humming. She never hummed in the mornings. "What's the occasion?" I asked. She raised an eyebrow. "We're going to see the Alhambra. I hum for architecture." I smiled, folded my hands in my lap, and watched the countryside blur by. Granada was quieter than I expected. Not silent, just respectful. Like the city knew what it held and didn't need to shout about it. The streets were narrow, like whispers passed between buildings. The air carried the scent of oranges and stone. We checked into a small inn run by a man who looked like someone's tired uncle. Our room had a view of rooftops and laundry lines. The kind of view that tells the truth. Not curated, not polished. Real. That evening, I sat alone on the terrace while Rosalie napped. I scrolled through my messages. Not to see what they said, but to remind myself that I could look and not react. It's a strange kind of freedom, the ability to choose silence. But one message caught me. It was from David. Just one line. "Mom, did we lose you?" There was no anger in it, no guilt either. Just a note, a recognition maybe. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my notebook. I'd bought it in Lisbon and hadn't written a single word in it. Now I began. Things I've never said out loud. I wasn't always tired. I just got tired of not being seen. Every time you called me old-fashioned, I swallowed a sentence I should have said. I still remember how you looked at 5 years old when you gave me a rock you'd found in the yard and called it precious. It was the last time you gave me something just because. I miss being called by my name. I didn't cry. I just kept writing. In the morning, we climbed to the Alhambra. It wasn't easy. The hill was steep, and my knees ached. But I kept going. Not to prove anything, just to see it for myself. And there it was. Arches and fountains and carvings that made me wonder how many hands had worked this stone. How many people had stood in the same spot thinking, so this is what beauty looks like when no one rushes it. Rosalie took a photo of me sitting on a bench, framed by light and shadow. "You look like someone who's remembered something important," she said. "I have," I said. "I remembered that I was never just someone who stayed behind." That night, back at the inn, I found a voice message from Amelia. Her voice sounded tight. "Grandma, I think Dad is starting to realize something's really changed. He asked if I'd heard from you." I said yes. He looked scared, kind of. Like he knows he can't just apologize with flowers and act like none of this happened. I told him, "You're not angry. You're just finished. I hope that was okay." It was more than okay. It was perfect. I replied with a photo Rosalie had taken that morning. Me, standing at the top of the hill, hands on hips, the Alhambra behind me, my face calm. No caption, just the image. She replied with a heart, and nothing else, which was exactly enough. I closed my phone, lay back on the bed, and stared at the ceiling fan whirring slowly above me. Tomorrow, we'd head toward the coast. Rosalie wanted to see the ocean again. I said yes, not because I needed the view, but because I finally had the space to want something again. We took the early bus to Cadiz. Rosalie claimed the sea air did wonders for her lungs and her posture. I think she just liked how the wind tangled her hair and made her feel like she was difficult to contain. The ride was long, the seats stiff, but I didn't mind. I watched the landscape flatten and widen, olive groves turning into scrub and then into salt marshes, until finally the coast appeared, wide and blue and breathing. We found a guest house near the old port. The room smelled of salt and old wood. From the balcony, we could see fishing boats pulling in at dusk, nets trailing like tired promises. I stood there for a long time, one hand resting on the railing, the wind tugging at my sleeve. That evening, we walked the beach. It was quieter than I expected. The waves weren't dramatic, just steady, persistent. Rosalie picked up a piece of sea glass and tucked it into her pocket. I walked barefoot, letting the cold water nip at my toes. There was a couple nearby, older than we were, holding hands like teenagers. They didn't speak, just walked together, fingers locked like the answer to a question they no longer needed to ask. I sat on a low rock and watched the sun dissolve into the horizon. Somewhere behind me, Rosalie was humming again, the same tune from the train to Granada. It floated on the wind and mixed with the gulls' cries. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't move. Not for a long time. But eventually, I pulled it out. It was David. Again. "Please, just let us hear your voice." I stared at the screen. Then I opened the voice memo app and pressed record. I didn't script it. I didn't rehearse. I just spoke. "David, I'm not angry, but I am changed. I spent most of my life waiting to be asked, to be needed, to be seen. And I was, sometimes. But mostly, I was the background to your lives. I don't say this to make you feel guilty. I say it because it's true. I love you. I always will. But I'm not coming back to the role you gave me. If you want me in your life, it won't be as a backup plan, or a babysitter, or a name on the emergency contact form. It'll have to be as a person, a whole one. I hope you understand. Good night." I hit send. The sea whispered something I couldn't quite translate. When I returned to the guest house, Rosalie was reading by the lamp. She looked up. "You sent it." I nodded. She closed her book. "How do you feel?" "Like I finally said the thing I'd been swallowing for 20 years. She smiled. "About damn time." That night, I dreamt of a hallway, endless, lined with closed doors. I walked slowly, barefoot, my fingers brushing each handle. And one by one, the doors clicked open behind me. I didn't look back. In the morning, there was no reply from David, but there was another message from Amelia, a photo. She'd drawn something, me on the beach, scarf around my neck, hair blown sideways. The caption read, "She looks like she remembered who she was." I stared at it for a long time. Then I turned to Rosalie. "Let's go dancing tonight." She blinked. "Dancing?" "Yes." "Do your knees even allow that?" I grinned. "They'll learn." The bar wasn't meant for us. Not really. It pulsed with energy too young, too fast, too certain of its own novelty. A converted warehouse near the docks, full of dim lights, loud bass, and a haze of perfume, sweat, and something else that clung to the walls like history repurposed. But we went anyway. Rosalie wore her silver hoops again, hair loose, lipstick precise. I wore the yellow scarf. It wasn't wrapped around my neck anymore. I tied it in my hair like a ribbon I'd earned. My dress was simple, soft cotton, old but clean. It didn't scream for attention. It didn't have to. We didn't look like we belonged. But then again, belonging had never done me much good. We found a table near the back. The music wasn't flamenco. It was newer, syncopated, with a beat that snuck under your skin and made your foot move before you realized it. The floor was crowded. Young couples, middle-aged tourists, a few locals who danced like the rhythm owed them rent. Rosalie sipped her drink and tapped her foot. I watched the dancers, how they moved, how they laughed, how some of them missed the beat but didn't care. A man in his 60s with a crooked mustache and worn shoes twirled a woman my age, and they both grinned like fools. Something in me shifted. "I'm going," I said. Rosalie looked up. "Where?" "Out there." She blinked. "Alone?" "Yes." I stood, adjusted the scarf in my hair, and walked onto the floor. I didn't wait for a partner. I didn't wait for permission. I just started moving. At first, it felt strange, like borrowing someone else's body. My limbs stiff, unsure, my breath shallow. But the beat pulled me forward, and the years fell off like dust from an old coat. I danced, not gracefully, not skillfully, but fully. A young man passed by and smiled. Not mockingly, genuinely. He offered a hand. I took it for a moment, spun once, laughed, then let go. I didn't need him to carry the rhythm. I had my own. Rosalie joined me after a while. We danced together like schoolgirls at a reunion, awkward, breathless, gleeful. We stayed for 2 hours, then 3. When we finally returned to the guest house, barefoot and flushed, we collapsed on the bed like teenagers sneaking back in. "That was irresponsible," Rosalie said, gasping. "I know." "I loved it." "I know." We lay there in silence, catching our breath. My knees ached, my back would hate me tomorrow, but my chest felt wide open. Before I fell asleep, I checked my phone. Still no response from David. I didn't feel disappointed, because there was another message. From Amelia. "Dad doesn't know how to answer you. He keeps reading your message. He printed it. It's on the kitchen table. He hasn't touched it all day. Mom thinks you've lost your mind. I told her maybe you finally found it. I miss you. I'm proud of you." I don't think I've ever said that before, but I am. I stared at her words, simple, quiet, real. I typed back, "I miss you too. Tell your father he doesn't have to answer yet. Some truths take time to land." She responded with a single emoji, a little anchor. It made me laugh. I set the phone down and stared at the ceiling. The fan spun lazily, slicing the air into slow, careful turns. I thought of the dance floor, the moment I let go. of how I hadn't done anything extraordinary. I hadn't climbed a mountain or learned a new language or fallen in love, but I had reclaimed something, my joy. And at 72, that felt as radical as anything. I drifted off to sleep with sore feet, tired muscles, and a heart that finally felt like it belonged to me again. We left Cadiz at dawn. Rosalie slept most of the ride, her head against the window, arms crossed like a woman who's known too many trains to bother with comfort. I didn't sleep. I watched the light move across the fields, watched the towns pass, names I wouldn't remember, places I'd never return to. I wasn't restless. I was preparing. Barcelona was our last stop. Neither of us said it out loud, but we knew. We'd seen enough cities to know when a journey is winding down, when the momentum that once pushed you forward becomes something quieter, something settled. We arrived just after noon and took a taxi to a quiet street near El Born. The hotel was small, the room plain, but the bed was soft and the windows opened wide. We unpacked in silence. Later, we walked. Not far. Just enough to feel the city under our feet. I remembered my granddaughter saying once, "Barcelona feels like it was built by someone who wanted to paint with buildings." She wasn't wrong. Gaudí's work peeked out from corners like mischief in stone. The colors were bold, the shapes impossible. I liked it more than I expected. We had dinner at a small cafe tucked between two bookstores. I ordered fish. Rosalie, soup. Neither of us finished our wine. The conversation was light, scattered, like a soft breeze, weather, train times, shoes. But underneath it, a different current. I think we both felt the end before it was near. That night, back at the hotel, I sat on the balcony with a shawl around my shoulders and my notebook in my lap. The list was longer now. Things I've never said out loud, page 3. I thought if I gave enough, they'd keep me close. But love bought by sacrifice is always least. I didn't mind getting older. I minded being dismissed. It took me 50 years to realize silence isn't always strength. Sometimes it's just fear dressed in patience. I don't regret the mother I was. I regret who I disappeared to become her. I closed the notebook. My phone buzzed. Not David. Not Amelia. My daughter-in-law, Laura. The message was longer than usual. "Helen, we've all been talking. David doesn't know how to reach you anymore. He thinks anything he says will come out wrong. I told him that sometimes listening matters more. We didn't mean to leave you out. I know that doesn't fix anything, but it's the truth. We planned the trip thinking it would be easier for the kids. We told ourselves you'd be more comfortable at home. That was a lie. We were afraid of your age, not because of your limitations, but because it reminded us of our own. We're sorry. I'm sorry. If you ever decide to come home, we'd like to start over. No expectations. Just you. As you are." I didn't cry, but I sat very still for a long time. It wasn't an apology that erased anything. It was simply a beginning. The next morning, Rosalie found me packing. She raised an eyebrow. "Home?" "Eventually." She nodded. "You sure?" "Yes." She sipped her tea. "Well, it's about time you threw the last punch." I laughed. Wasn't a punch. More like a door opened. Rosalie left 2 days later. We hugged at the station. Neither of us said goodbye. Just soon. That night, alone in the room, I ordered one last glass of wine from the bar downstairs and sat by the window. My scarf was on the table, my shoes by the door. I didn't feel finished, but I felt full. Tomorrow, I'd buy a ticket. Not back to the house they told me to watch, but to the life I finally chose to return to, on my terms. The airport felt less like a goodbye and more like a pause. I wasn't leaving something behind. I was bringing something back. Myself, maybe. Or what was left of her after decades of waiting in silence. The flight was quiet. I didn't watch a movie. I didn't read. I just sat with the hum of the engine and my thoughts, watching the land below shrink, flatten, vanish. When I landed, no one was waiting. I didn't expect them to be. The air was thicker here, the sky more muted. It smelled like damp grass and overwatered hedges, a familiar kind of forgotten. I took a cab. The driver was young, chatty. I gave short answers and stared out the window, the streets sliding by like memories I hadn't asked to remember. The bakery I used to take Amelia to. The park where David broke his arm falling from the monkey bars. The pharmacy where Laura and I once stood side by side, buying cough syrup and a pregnancy test. They weren't bad memories. They were just far away now, like someone else's handwriting in an old book. My house was exactly as I left it. Carol had watered the plants. The porch was clean. The key turned easily in the lock. Inside, everything held its breath. I walked from room to room, touching things, the edge of the couch, the chipped ceramic bowl on the table, the photo of Paul by the fireplace. Nothing had moved, but everything had changed. I didn't unpack right away. I made tea, sat at the kitchen table with the window open, let the silence stretch. My phone buzzed. A message from Amelia. "Are you home?" I typed back. "Yes." 10 minutes later. "Can I come by?" I didn't hesitate. "Yes." Doors open. She arrived in 20. No ceremony, no speech, just a long, quiet hug that said more than either of us could. She sat across from me, her backpack still slung over one shoulder. She looked older than when I left, not by age, by understanding. "I liked your list," she said. I blinked. "My list?" She smiled. "You left your notebook open in one of the photos. I read it. Well, part of it." I didn't feel exposed. I felt seen. "I've been making one too," she said, reaching into her bag. "You inspired me." She handed over a small spiral notebook. The first page read, "Things I refuse to inherit quietly. The belief that women outgrow desire. The idea that aging is decline. The habit of saying, 'I'm fine,' when I'm not. The silence that comes after someone tells you you're too much. The shame passed down like furniture." I read them all. Then I looked at her, this girl woman who'd watched me disappear and come back. "You're going to be all right," I said. She nodded. "Because you were." We talked for hours about art school, her boyfriend, the way her mother still spoke too loud when nervous. At one point, I reached for her hand. "You know," I said, "your father hasn't called yet." She looked down. "He's scared." "Of me?" "Of what you've become, of what he never let himself see before." I didn't respond. The doorbell rang. Amelia looked up. "That's them." I didn't move. "I'll get it," she said gently. I heard the door open, muffled voices, then silence, then David. He stepped into the kitchen like it was sacred ground, his face tired, older. He looked at me like someone waiting for permission to speak. "I wanted to come alone," he said. But Laura insisted. She appeared behind him, hands clasped. No makeup, no posture. Just real. "We don't know how to start," she said. I stood. "You already did," I replied. "You showed up." David took a step forward. "I didn't want to lose you." "You didn't," I said. "You just stopped seeing me." He nodded. "I'm sorry. Not grand, not poetic, just honest. It was enough." "I made tea," I said. "There's still some in the pot." They sat. Not as owners of the space, not as people asking for forgiveness like a favor, but as people who finally realized the seat at the table wasn't theirs by default. It had to be earned. They didn't stay long, an hour, maybe less. Enough time for awkward sips of tea, too many pauses, and the quiet work of building a new shape between us. I didn't rush it. I didn't smooth over the rough parts. Let them feel the quiet I'd lived in for years. Let them sit in it a while. Laura spoke more than David. She always had. But this time, there was less certainty in her voice, more listening between her sentences. She asked about my trip, about the places, the food, the people. I gave her pieces, not the whole. She didn't deserve the whole. Not yet. When they left, David lingered at the door. "Can I?" he started, then stopped. "Do you want to come for dinner sometime? No big gathering. Just us. You and me." I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no. He seemed relieved by that. After they were gone, the house was quiet again. But not the same quiet. Not the brittle kind that cracks when you breathe too loudly. This was a softer hush, a pause before a new line begins. That night, I sat on the porch with a blanket across my lap, the notebook open again. I hadn't added to it in Barcelona. I think part of me knew I'd need space for this, for homecoming. "Things I know now," I wrote at the top of a new page. People don't notice your silence until it costs them something. Leaving isn't the same as running away. You can still start over at 72. Some doors don't need to be slammed, just closed, softly but firmly. Your voice isn't gone. It's waiting for you to stop asking for permission. I paused, tapped the pen against the paper, then added, "Forgiveness isn't for them. It's for your own breath." I closed the notebook, laid it on the side table, and breathed in the scent of night jasmine. Amelia came by the next afternoon. No warning, no reason. Just walked in, kicked off her shoes, and flopped onto the couch like she used to when she was little. "I made a decision," she said. "Oh?" "I'm applying to the program in Berlin." I looked at her. Her eyes were nervous but steady. "I know it's far," she said, "and Mom's already freaking out. But I need to do this. I need to go." I didn't flinch. "You should," I said. She blinked. "Really?" "Don't wait for permission," I said. "You'll miss your life." Her mouth curled into a slow, wide smile. "I knew you'd understand." She stayed for hours. We made soup. We talked about books. She asked about Rosalie, laughed when I said we'd danced until our legs gave out. "You're kind of a legend," she said, teasing. "No," I said. "I'm just finally myself." Before she left, she handed me a small envelope. Inside was a drawing, the same beach from Cadiz, but with a new figure standing at the water's edge. Me, arms open, head tilted toward the sea. On the bottom, she'd written, "She didn't come back the same," and that was the point. I looked up. She shrugged. "I'm gonna get it framed." After she left, I placed it beside Paul's photo on the mantel. He would have understood. The next morning, I received a letter. Real paper, blue ink. David's handwriting. It said, "Mom, thank you for the tea, for letting us sit in the silence. I see it now. I don't expect to be forgiven, but I'd like to try. Not to erase anything, but to build something better. If you're willing. No declarations, no promises, just a man learning how to speak differently to the woman who raised him." I folded the letter. I didn't reply. Not yet. Some silences aren't meant to be filled. They're meant to be honored. I didn't go to dinner right away. I let the invitation sit. Days passed, then a week. I watered my own plants. I cooked for myself. I walked in the mornings. Not because I was punishing anyone, not because I wanted them to worry, but because I needed to feel the shape of my life without them in it. And it was a good shape. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady, dignified, mine. Rosalie wrote me a postcard from Marseille. They still think I'm a widow with a secret inheritance, she scribbled. Let them. On the back, a sketch of two women dancing in a bar, one with a yellow scarf, arms lifted. I laughed when I saw it, framed it, put it by the kitchen window. Then, one morning, I called David. Sunday, I said. 5 o'clock. I'll bring dessert. He sounded surprised, grateful, careful, as he should. When I arrived at their house, Laura opened the door. She didn't smile too quickly, didn't reach in for a hug, just stepped aside and said, "Come in." I walked through the rooms like a guest, not like someone who'd once been here every week. The walls had new art. The furniture had been rearranged. Even the air felt different. I wasn't hurt. They'd kept living. So had I. Amelia was already at the table. She got up and kissed my cheek. "I made salad," she whispered, like it was a shared secret. "Don't tell Mom if it's bad." I took my seat. Dinner was fine, civil, a little stilted. David asked questions. Laura offered seconds. Amelia made jokes. I answered simply. I listened more than I spoke. I watched the way David glanced at me like someone checking for cracks in a wall. Toward the end, he cleared his throat. I read your notebook." I looked at him. "What notebook?" "The one on the counter in the photo. Amelia let me read some of it." I raised an eyebrow. "She showed you?" "She said it was important I saw what you weren't saying." That sounded like her. He hesitated, then added, "It hurt." "Good," I said. He looked up, startled. "Good," I repeated, "because it means you finally heard me." He nodded slowly. "I did." Laura cleared her throat. "We've talked about things, a lot, and we want to do better. I'm not here for promises," I said. "I'm here to see if you're learning." They both nodded. I took out the dessert. Lemon tart. Not too sweet, just sharp enough to wake the mouth. We ate in silence for a while. Then Amelia said, "I want to read something." She pulled a folded page from her pocket. Her own list now. Her voice shook a little. "Things I want to remember. My grandma taught me that disappearing quietly is a slow kind of death. That staying soft is not the same as staying silent. That women don't owe their energy to the comfort of others. That loving someone doesn't mean becoming small for them. That it's okay to outgrow your place at the table and demand a new one." I blinked hard. No one spoke for a long time. Eventually, Laura stood. She began clearing dishes. David helped. Amelia poured more tea, and I sat back, hands resting in my lap, watching the quiet unfold. Not the uncomfortable kind, but the earned kind. The kind you share when people are finally learning how to hold each other honestly. When I left, David walked me to the door. He hesitated before speaking. "I know it'll take time," he said. "I have time," I answered. Then I reached into my bag, pulled out a thin envelope and handed it to him. "What's this?" "A copy of the tickets, the ones I canceled." He stared at it. "I kept them," I said. "Not out of spite, out of truth. So we don't forget how easy it was to erase me." He didn't open the envelope, just nodded and tucked it into his pocket. We didn't hug, but we stood close, like people who might one day understand each other without needing to explain every bruise. At home, I undressed slowly, took off my earrings, folded my scarf. I stood at the mirror, studying my face. Older, yes, but not tired. Wiser, but not cold. There were lines there that hadn't been before the trip, but they weren't cracks. They were paths, routes I'd taken back to myself. Before bed, I wrote one last page. Things I no longer apologize for. Wanting space, wanting more, saying no, leaving quietly, coming back louder. And at the bottom, in small script, I was never too old. I was just never asked if I still dreamed. Now I don't wait to be asked. I go.